In the heart of Charleston's gilded mansions, where whispers of old sins linger like fog over the marshes, one archivist uncovered a divine reckoning: babies torn from their mother's arms, their bloodlines erased in the name of purity. But God sees all, and vengeance comes not with thunder, but with the quiet turn of a forbidden page. In the sweltering haze of post-war South Carolina, where the air hung heavy with the scent of magnolias and unspoken regrets, Eleanor Voss stepped into the underbelly of history. It was April 1951, and the Charleston County Records office loomed like a forgotten tomb on the edge of the historic district, its red brick facade cracked by time, vines creeping up the walls as if nature itself sought to bury the secrets within. Eleanor, a widow in her late 30s with sharp hazel eyes and a posture forged from years of quiet endurance, had taken the job out of necessity. Her husband's death in Korea had left her with a modest pension that barely covered the rent on her small clapboard house near the Ashley River, where the water lapped rhythmically against the docks like a heartbeat echoing lost souls. The basement was her domain now, a labyrinth of steel cabinets standing sentinel in the dim glow of bare bulbs that buzzed like trapped insects. The air was thick, laced with the musty tang of decaying paper and the faint, acrid bite of mold, as if the room itself exhaled the breath of the dead. Dust motes swirled in the erratic light, casting ethereal halos that reminded Eleanor of the stained glass windows in her childhood church, where sermons on divine justice had first ignited her sense of moral fire. As the new chief archivist, her mandate was clear: sift through 4 decades of chaos, births, deaths, adoptions, left in disarray by the retiring Mr. Elias Thornton, a man whose system was little more than haphazard piles and cryptic notations scribbled in fading ink. Eleanor adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses, the frames cool against her skin, and pulled a ledger from the highest shelf. It was bound in cracked leather, the spine groaning like an old confessor reluctant to reveal its burdens. The year embossed in gold leaf, 1925. She carried it to her desk, a scarred oak relic. Scarred by countless coffee rings and cigarette burns, and opened it with the reverence one might afford a sacred text. Page after page unfurled before her, meticulous entries in looping cursive, cataloging the arrivals of new lives into a world still scarred by the Great War and the rigid hierarchies of the Jim Crow South. Names of mothers, fathers, races, all etched with the precision of a society obsessed with bloodlines and purity, where a single drop could damn or elevate. But then, amid the orderly rows, a void. A female infant, marked as European descent. Mother's name, absent. Father's name, absent. Place of birth, Charleston Orphanage for the Destitute. Adopted within 2 days to Mr. and Mrs. Reginald Hargrove of Laguerre Street, a boulevard lined with antebellum mansions where Spanish moss draped from oaks like veils of mourning. Eleanor's pen scratched across her notepad, the sound sharpened the silence, as she noted the anomaly. It wasn't the first she'd seen in her initial sweeps, but something about this one prickled her skin, like the chill of a graveyard wind. In her years at the Beaufort Public Library, organizing wartime correspondences and family genealogies, she'd encountered gaps, clerical oversights, hurried entries by exhausted scribes. Yet these blanks felt intentional, like sins scrubbed from a confessional ledger, leaving only the faint imprint of guilt. She flipped further, the pages whispering secrets. Another entry: male child, European, no progenitors listed. Born at the same orphanage, whisked away in under 48 hours to the affluent Beaumonts on East Bay Street, where gas lamps flickered like watchful eyes over cobblestone paths. Eleanor's brow furrowed, her fingers tracing the empty fields as if they might yield hidden ink under pressure. The consistency unnerved her. These weren't random orphans abandoned in the night, they were pristine entries, devoid of the usual notations: mother anonymous due to hardship, or infant found at church. Steps. No, these were ghosts in the machine, babies manifesting as if by divine fiat, only to be claimed by the city's elite, families whose fortunes were built on cotton, rice, and the shadowed labor of generations past. Lighting at Chesterfield, her second that morning, the smoke curling upward like incense in a ritual of revelation, Eleanor leaned back in her creaking chair. The basement's shadows seemed to deepen, pooling in the corners like unabsolved transgressions. She recalled her grandmother's tales, whispered over quilting bees, of biblical plagues and the wrath visited upon Pharaoh for stealing the innocents. Was this modern echo? A perversion of providence, where human hands played God, severing bonds of flesh and spirit? Her instincts, sharpened by a life of piecing together fragmented histories, screamed that this was no mere administrative lapse. It was a pattern, woven with the threads of power and prejudice, hinting at a deeper rot in the soul of Charleston, a city where the holy city's spires pierced the sky, yet harbored darkness in its foundations. Over the ensuing weeks, Eleanor's routine became a vigil. She'd arrive at dawn, the streets still shrouded in mist rolling off the harbor, the clip-clop of milk wagons the only sound piercing the quiet. Coffee brewed in the upstairs kitchen, black, bitter, mirroring her growing unease, she'd descend with notepad in hand, the stairs creaking like judgments underfoot. By midday, the basement warmed to a stifling humidity, her blouse clinging to her skin as she pored over ledgers from 1920 to 1940. Lunch was a hurried sandwich at her desk, crumbs scattering over documents like offerings to the archive gods. Evenings stretched late, the office emptying above her, leaving only the hum of the lights and the distant rumble of thunder over the Atlantic. The anomalies multiplied like weeds in fertile soil. From 1924 to 1938, she tallied 158 infants fitting the mold, all classified as white or European, parental. Fields barren as a fallow field, routed through either the Charleston Orphanage or the enigmatic Mercy Haven Adoption League. Each adopted with unnatural speed, days, not months, to households of opulence, the Vanderhorsts on Trad Street, with their wrought iron balconies overlooking gardens blooming with camellias, the Middletons on Meeting Street, their homes echoing with the ghosts of revolutionary heroes. What chilled Eleanor wasn't merely the voids, but the implications. These children, integrated seamlessly into white society, their origins expunged as if by holy water, absolving the adopters of any taint. Her quest deepened when she delved into the hospital archives, stored in rusted file boxes that exhaled dust like ancient sighs. Charleston General Hospital's ledgers were paragons of detail, admissions logged with clinical precision, patient demographics, ailments, outcomes. Organizing these had been rote until a Tuesday in May, when storm clouds gathered outside, thunder growling like divine displeasure. Alone in the records room, having dismissed her part-time aide, young Clara, with feigned concern for her health, Eleanor arrayed documents across the table like a mosaic of malediction. Left side, birth certificate for infant Eliza, European, no kin recorded. Delivered April 9, 1932. Adopted April 12 to the affluent Fairchilds on Church Street. Right side, hospital intake for Lila Mae Thompson, colored, age 22, admitted for labor April 8, 1932. Birthed a daughter at 4:12 a.m. on the 9th, released April 11, sans child. Physician, Dr. Elias Thorne. The synchronicity struck like lightning, same hour, same ward, yet officially disparate, as if fate had bifurcated a single soul. Eliza, pure and parentless, Lila, bereft and branded by race. Eleanor's pulse quickened, her breath shallow as she matched another. Infant Thomas, white, no origins, born July 15, 1929, claimed by the Worthingtons. Counterpart, Bessie Harlan, Negro, 20, labored July 14, delivered son July 15. At dusk. Discharged empty-armed. Dr. Thorne again. By twilight, under the desk lamp's harsh glare casting elongated shadows like accusing fingers, she had 19 pairs, mothers of color vanishing into obscurity, their progeny reborn as white heirs. The racial alchemy was profane, a mockery of Genesis, where God formed man from dust, but here men reforged lives from deceit, trading in souls for social ascension. Stubborn, her cigarette in a tin ashtray overflowing with butts like spent prayers, Eleanor whispered a verse from Psalms, "The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth." This was no error, it was orchestration, a symphony of sin conducted by Dr. Thorne, whose signature scarred every record like a mark of Cain. Thorne wasn't obscure, he was Charleston's medical luminary, his name etched on hospital wings, his influence woven into the fabric of society like threads of gold in a tapestry of corruption. To expose this would invoke retribution, for power guards its shadows jealously. Yet Eleanor pressed on, her resolve stealing like a prophet's in the wilderness. She needed irrefutable proof, the mechanics, the beneficiaries, the profane prophets. Late nights blurred into dawns, she mapped connections on concealed parchments, hidden in her satchel like forbidden scrolls. The orphanage, shuttered in 1945, now a spectral tenement on Broad Street, its windows staring blankly like eyes devoid of life. She drove by one dusk, the setting sun painting the bricks blood red, evoking the biblical slaughter of innocents, where Herod's blade severed futures for fear of a king. Mercy Haven Adoption League persisted, a facade of benevolence on Calhoun Street, its sign gleaming under gaslights. On a humid Saturday, Eleanor approached, attired in Sunday finery, a gray wool dress hugging her frame, hat pinned with a feather like a plume of defiance. Inside, polished oak desks and portraits of cherubic children masked the undercurrents. Behind the counter sat Miss Adelaide Voss, no relation, thank heavens, a matron with pince-nez perched on a hawkish nose. "Good day," Eleanor intoned, voice laced with feigned timidity, "a lamb among wolves. I'm seeking details on a family adoption from 1930, my aunt's child, lost to time, now heir to an estate." She spun her tale, the deceased relative, the unclaimed fortune, the need for confirmation. Miss Voss's lips thinned, her ledger snapped shut like a trap. "Records are sacrosanct, ma'am. State mandate seals them tighter than a tomb. Court order required." Her eyes, cold as marble angels in a cemetery, betrayed no crack, but Eleanor sensed the rehearsed barrier, a shield against the light of truth. Departing, Eleanor's mind whirled like eddies in the Cooper River. This was no mere policy, it was a bulwark, erected by those who feared the ghosts of their deeds rising. Paranoia crept in, she altered arrivals, duplicated notes in a shoebox under her bed, amid faded photos of her husband, his smile a reminder of lost purity. The tally swelled, 158 to 172, 189, 212, a legion of stolen spirits, their cries echoing in the ether. Scrutinizing adopters revealed a cabal, intermarriages linking Hargroves to Beaumonts, Fairchilds to Worthingtons, shared pews in St. Michael's Episcopal, where sermons on redemption rang hollow, mutual ventures in shipping and real estate, fortunes buoyed by these miracle children, vessels of untainted legacy. In mid-June, amid a downpour that turned streets to rivers of repentance, Eleanor unearthed the fiscal vein. Hospital financials, ledgers of inflows and outflows, revealed cryptic disbursements to the Palmetto Infant Aid Foundation, $600, $950, $1,200, labeled ambiguously as placement aid or welfare consultations. The foundation, birthed in 1923, dissolved in 1941, shared quarters with Mercy Haven. Founder, Dr. Elias Thorne. The revelation crashed like waves on Sullivan's Island. Thorne, the architect, profiting from this trafficking of souls, perverting medicine's oath into a pact with Mammon. Eleanor's hands shook as she noted it, the rain pattering against the basement window like tears from heaven. This was divine indictment, a modern Babel where men built towers of lies, only for truth to topple them. But exposure meant peril, these threads bound the mighty, and the mighty crushed the meek. Yet in her solitude, Eleanor felt a spiritual stirring, a call to be the instrument of justice, like Esther before the king. The babies, now adults, carried unseen scars, their identities fractured, their mothers haunted by empty cradles. What redemption could mend such rifts? Only the light, piercing the veil, invoking the ultimate judge. As thunder rolled, she vowed to delve deeper, her quest a pilgrimage through the valley of shadows, where sin's legacy whispered of retribution eternal. In the oppressive humidity of Charleston's summer, where the air clung like a shroud of unresolved sins, Eleanor Voss delved deeper into the abyss she had uncovered. It was now July 1951, and the records office basement had become her confessional, a dimly lit chamber where fluorescent tubes hummed like distant choirs, casting pallid glows that danced across stacks of files like ethereal judgments. The scent of aged paper mingled with the faint ozone of impending storms, evoking the biblical floodwaters that once cleansed the earth of wickedness. Eleanor's hands, calloused from endless turning of pages, bore the marks of her pilgrimage, her eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, reflected the weight of souls unaccounted for. Widowed and weary, she found solace in scripture, whispering verses from Job about the hidden counsels of the wicked, as she pieced together the fragments of a modern abomination. Dr. Elias Thorne emerged from the documents like a specter from the mist, a man enshrined in Charleston's annals as a beacon of benevolence. His obituary, clipped from the 1946 edition of the Charleston Gazette, painted him as a saint among sinners, founder of the city's inaugural children's ward, advocate for the underfed orphans of the Depression, a deacon at St. Philip's Episcopal Church where he led prayers for the afflicted. Married faithfully for 42 years, father to 4 upstanding heirs, his passing had drawn crowds to his funeral, where eulogies hailed him as the healer who mended broken futures. Donations flooded to Mercy Haven Adoption League in his honor, a testament to his unwavering commitment to the innocent. Yet, as Eleanor traced the financial veins pulsing through his legacy, the portrait cracked like a false idol under divine scrutiny. The Palmetto Infant Aid Foundation, Thorne's brainchild, revealed itself as the conduit of corruption. Eleanor unearthed ledgers from the hospital's vault, brittle pages bound in faded green cloth, entries inscribed in precise ledgerhand that belied the chaos they concealed. Payments streamed in, $750 from Charleston General's coffers in 1926, annotated as Infant Welfare Consultation, $1,100 in 1932 for placement services rendered. These weren't isolated. Cross-referencing with county welfare disbursements uncovered more, $400 from the Child Services Board in 1929, $850 in 1935. Private donations swelled the pot, sums from the Hargroves, Beaumonts, and Fairchilds, familiar names from adoption records, disguised as charitable gifts or facilitation fees. Over 2 decades, the foundation amassed nearly $400,000 in error-adjusted wealth, a king's ransom funneled through Thorne's hands, enriching him while cloaking his deeds in philanthropy. Eleanor's desk became an altar of accusation, strewn with these fiscal confessions. The lamplight pooled on the papers like accusatory spotlights, highlighting the stark arithmetic of exploitation. She lit a cigarette, the flame's brief flare mirroring the spark of righteous indignation in her chest, smoke rising like incense to an avenging god. Thorne's charity was a veil for trafficking in human currency, light-complexioned infants born to mothers of color, their hues pale enough to pass the invisible barriers of segregation. As hospital overseer, he dictated the narratives etched on birth certificates: European descent, parents expunged like original sin washed away. Through his foundation and ties to Mercy Haven, he brokered the exchanges, linking desperate elites, infertile couples among Charleston's aristocracy, to these miracle children. The mechanism was diabolical in its simplicity, a perversion of the Good Samaritan parable where the helper became the thief. Mothers, often unwed and impoverished, entered the hospital wards under duress, their bodies racked by labor pains in sterile rooms reeking of carbolic acid and despair. Post-delivery, nurses, complicit shadows in starched uniforms, whisked the newborns away under Thorne's orders. Stillborn, the verdict came, delivered with feigned sympathy, eyes averted like Judas avoiding the gaze of betrayal. No corpses presented, no certificates of demise issued, just empty arms and shattered spirits. The women, branded by race and poverty, had no leverage in a society where Jim Crow's chains bound tighter than any manacle. Who would heed a colored woman's wail against a white patriarch's word? The adopters, ensconced in their columned mansions along the Battery, received pristine progeny, babies who blended seamlessly into family portraits, their origins laundered cleaner than heirloom linens. Fees masqueraded as benevolence ensured silence. In a pre-DNA epoch, blood ties were matters of faith, not science. Everyone profited but the bereft, mothers haunted by phantom cries, their wombs echoing with loss, while the children grew in gilded cages, oblivious to the theft of their heritage. It was a symphony of sin, conducted with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, exploiting the era's racial alchemy where one drop of blood could condemn, but its absence could redeem. Eleanor's revelations stirred a spiritual turmoil within her, evoking the prophet's cries against idolatry. Thorne had played God, redistributing lives as if they were loaves and fishes, but twisted for personal gain. His church deaconship mocked the commandments: "Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness," his compassion a facade for covetousness. She pondered the divine ledger, where every soul is accounted, wondering if Thorne's eternal fate mirrored the hell he inflicted, an endless void of separation, mother's laments his eternal chorus. But documents alone were parchment ghosts. Eleanor craved the flesh and blood testimonies to animate the horror. Venturing into this realm was fraught with peril, a white woman probing the wounds of black communities, where trust was as scarce as justice. Charleston's segregated neighborhoods pulsed with their own rhythms: laughter of children skipping rope on cracked sidewalks, the sizzle of okra frying in cast-iron pans, the soulful hymns drifting from church windows on sultry evenings. Yet beneath lay layers of guarded pain, memories of lynchings and lost rights, making outsiders suspect. She began with Lila Mae Thompson, whose 1932 hospital stay aligned with infant Eliza's emergence. The record listed an address on Reed Street, an enclave of shotgun houses with tin roofs that drummed under rain like penitential beats. Eleanor arrived on a sweltering Sunday afternoon, the sun baking the earth like a refiner's fire. Her Ford coupe rumbled to a stop, drawing curious glances from porch sitters fanning themselves with newspapers. The house at number 47 was a weathered blue affair, its front yard blooming with zinnias defiant against the heat. An elderly woman rocked on the veranda, her silver hair braided like ropes of wisdom, eyes sharp as discernment. "Afternoon, ma'am," Eleanor called, approaching with measured steps, her dress modest and unassuming. "I'm seeking Lila Mae Thompson, from records back in 32. The woman paused her rocking, the chair's creak halting like a suspended breath. "Lila's been gone 15 years now. I'm her sister, Beatrice. What business you got dredging up old graves?" Eleanor opted for candor tempered with caution, perching on the steps like a supplicant. "I work archives for the county. Found mismatches, births without mothers, mothers without births. I suspect foul play, babies taken and passed off." Beatrice's gaze pierced like a seer's, weighing Eleanor's soul. After a silence thick as molasses, she nodded. "Lila went in heavy with child, unmarried, father a mill hand who vanished like smoke. She dreamed of her girl, named her Ruby after our mama. Hospital folks said the baby came still, no breath. But Lila swore she felt kicks till the end, heard a wail, strong, like a trumpet call." "Did she press them?" Eleanor whispered, the air heavy with shared grief. "Tried. Demanded the body for burial. They claimed it buried already, pauper's plot, no marker. When she raised hell, cops hauled her off for disturbance. Spent a week in lockup, came out broken. Later, men in suits warned her, keep quiet or lose her job, her home. She carried that wound to her grave, praying for reunion in glory." Eleanor's throat constricted, tears blurring the notes in her lap. This was incarnation, the abstract sins made manifest in trembling voices, wrinkled hands clutching faded photos. Lila's story echoed Eve's loss in Eden, paradise stolen by deceit. Undeterred, Eleanor pursued more voices, her car becoming a chariot through shadowed lanes. On Cannon Street, she found Bessie Harlan's nephew, a mechanic with oil-stained hands and a memory etched in sorrow. Aunt Bess said her boy was fair as dawn, eyes like hers. Held him brief, then nurse snatched him 4 checks. Next, passed in the night. No proof, just words. She haunted that hospital, got committed for hysteria. Came out sterile, complications, they said. But we knew, punishment for questioning. In a modest home on Line Street, Eleanor met Viola Jenkins, alive at 68, her frame frail but spirit unbowed. Seated in a parlor adorned with crochet doilies and a worn Bible, Viola's voice quavered like a lamentation psalm. "My daughter, born 28. Pale as milk, perfect. They let me nurse her once, then gone. Died of fever, no body shown. I stormed back, accused Dr. Thorne. They locked me in asylum 3 months, drugged me till I doubted my mind. And while there, they cut me, sterilized, said I was unfit." Unfit? For loving my own? The tales cascaded like revelations, 9 more interviews, each a verse in a dirge of deception. Light-skinned babes vanishing into white arms, mothers silenced by badges, bars, or blades. One, Mabel Green, lost her livelihood when her employer, a hospital board member, learned of her inquiries. Another, Sadie Cole, faced midnight visitors threatening her remaining children. The system was a leviathan, tentacles entwining medicine, law, and society, devouring dissent. Eleanor's compilation grew, a dossier of damnation, 212 cases now, financial trails like Judas's silver, testimonies raw as open wounds. The network sprawled, complicit nurses averting eyes, clerks forging seals, judges signing committals with indifferent flourishes. All shielded by the era's racial veil, where black grief was dismissed as delusion, white authority infallible as gospel. Spiritually, it ravaged her visions of the great white throne judgment, where Thorne and his ilk faced the ledger of lives. Redemption seemed distant, these mothers, like Rachel weeping for her children, found no comfort. Yet in their resilience, Eleanor glimpsed grace, faith sustaining them through decades, prayers for lost ones ascending like smoke signals to heaven. She needed an ally beyond the web, an uncorrupted sword. Local powers were tainted, police had enforced the silence, administrators profited. Her gaze turned to attorney Samuel Hargrove on Queen Street, known for tilting at windmills of injustice, his cases splashed in papers like modern crusades. As twilight fell, shadows lengthening like fingers of fate, Eleanor prepared her approach, heart pounding with the rhythm of impending reckoning. The storm brewed, divine winds gathering to scatter the chaff. The summer of 1951 draped Charleston in a smothering veil of heat and humidity, the kind that made every breath feel like inhaling regret. Eleanor Voss, once a quiet guardian of the past in the county records basement, now stood on the precipice of revelation or ruin. Her apartment on the edge of the historic district overlooked the Cooper River, where ships glided like ghosts under a moon that seemed to judge her every move. Nights found her on the narrow balcony, cigarette after cigarette burning down to ash, the smoke curling upward like unanswered prayers. Scripture passages from Isaiah haunted her: "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness." She had uncovered darkness, and now it threatened to swallow her whole. Her first hope lay with attorney Samuel Hargrove, whose office occupied a narrow brick building squeezed between a bank and a realty firm on Broad Street. The waiting room smelled of polished wood and old coffee, its modest chairs worn from the weight of desperate petitioners. At precisely 3 o'clock on a sweltering Thursday in late July, the secretary, with eyes kind but weary, ushered Eleanor into Hargrove's inner sanctum. He was a lean man in his mid-50s, silver hair receding at the temples, spectacles perched on a sharp nose that had sniffed out injustice before. His handshake was firm, professional, betraying nothing. "Miss Voss," he began, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk cluttered with legal tomes and yellowed case files. "My secretary mentioned records requiring legal eyes. Speak plainly, what have you brought?" Eleanor set her briefcase down with deliberate care, as if it contained dynamite. She withdrew a slim folder, selected excerpts only, the full arsenal still hidden. "I'm the county's chief archivist, Mr. Hargrove. In cataloging decades of documents, I've uncovered what appears to be systematic infant trafficking, babies taken from black mothers, their origins erased, sold as white to elite families through fraudulent channels. Led by Dr. Elias Thorne, using his hospital authority and private foundation." Hargrove's brows lifted fractionally. He accepted the folder, scanning the matched records, birth certificates listing European infants with no parents, hospital admissions for colored mothers discharged empty-handed on the same dates. Financial trails snaked through the pages, payments to the Palmetto Infant Aid Foundation, Thorne's creation. Testimonies from grieving kin followed, raw and unfiltered. He read in silence for long minutes, the only sound the tick of a wall clock and distant carriage horses on cobblestones. His expression shifted, curiosity to gravity to something akin to sorrow. Finally, he closed the folder. "These span the 1920s to 1940. You're accusing Dr. Thorne, whose name graces hospital wings, whose obituary praised him as a savior of children, of orchestrating a child-stealing ring." "Not accusation yet," Eleanor replied, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Evidence. Dates align perfectly except for race. Payments unexplained. Mothers told their babies died, no bodies, no graves. Over 212 cases documented. More may exist." Hargrove removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. 212. Lord have mercy. He rose, pacing to the window overlooking Broad Street's bustle, lawyers in seersucker, women in summer dresses, the facade of normalcy. Assume every word true. Thorne's dead. The networked nurses, clerks, agencies, scattered or gone. The adoptive families? Pillars of society. The children? Grown adults, 30s and 40s, living lives built on these lies. So we do nothing? Eleanor's words cut sharp. Let the powerful escape because time passed? He turned, eyes piercing. Consider the fallout. The adoptees discover their heritage stolen, identity shattered, families fractured. Biological mothers, elderly now, reopen wounds decades old, knowing reunion's impossible. Adoptive parents, some innocent, believing legitimate adoptions, face ruin, scandal, shame. Even if some suspected, proving intent after 30 years? Near impossible. Dead men can't stand trial. Eleanor leaned forward. The mothers deserve truth. The children deserve to know who they are. Lies built on theft can't stand forever. Truth matters, Hargrove conceded softly. But at what cost? Justice for whom? The dead perpetrators? The living victims who suffer anew? Or the principle of exposing sin, no matter the wreckage? He returned to his desk, sliding the folder back. I respect your fire, Miss Voss. But I can't join this crusade. The harm outweighs the good. The powerful protect their own, always have. She gathered her papers, heart sinking like lead in the harbor. Then my path is clear. Truth isn't negotiable. Hargrove's final words followed her out, be careful. Charleston buries its scandals deep. The weekend blurred into sleepless vigil. Eleanor paced her balcony, river breeze carrying the scent of salt and jasmine. She thought of Viola Jenkins's trembling hands recounting her sterilized womb, of Beatrice's quiet fury over her sister's phantom cries. Of Thorne's pristine legacy, plaques gleaming while mothers wept in obscurity. Divine justice, she mused, wasn't swift thunder, it was the slow unraveling of lies, the inevitable exposure before the throne where no rank shielded the guilty. Monday brought resolve. She compiled her magnum opus, 58 single-spaced pages of irrefutable chronology. Matched cases detailed with timelines, financial ledgers annotated, sworn affidavits from survivors, institutional complicity mapped like a web of iniquity. Photocopies of damning documents appended. 3 copies, one locked in her office drawer, one in her home safe behind winter woolens, one sealed and mailed to the Charleston Post's editor with a cover letter pleading for investigation. 2 weeks of agonizing silence followed. She maintained routine archiving, cataloging, while dread coiled in her gut. Then, mid-August, a summons to Howard Brennan's upstairs office. Sun streamed through windows overlooking the street, certificates of commendation mocking her from the wall. Brennan, usually affable, sat rigid, face carved from stone. Sit, Eleanor. His voice lacked warmth. You've accessed records beyond your archival mandate, hospital files, finances, adoptions unrelated to county organization. Everything was properly handled, she countered. My duty is preservation. I found crimes. Your duty is organization, not investigation. He produced a thick dossier, her patterns tracked, copies noted. You've pulled targeted files, duplicated documents, taken extraneous notes. Surveillance. Betrayal. Hargrove, her confidant, had alerted the county. Griffin contacted me, Brennan confirmed. Concerned about your zeal. Allegations against respected figures based on old coincidences. They're not coincidences, she insisted. Patterns are clear. Thorne stole babies. Dr. Thorne was a benefactor, Brennan interrupted. Pediatric pioneer. His programs endure. Your claims defame a dead man, slander families. Clerical errors explain mismatches. Donations were legitimate charity. He stood. Your employment ends immediately. Paid through month end. Security will escort you for personal effects. The words struck like lashes. Fired. For truth-seeking. Guards, polite but implacable, watched her pack, notepad, pen, family photo, mug. When she reached the locked drawer, one halted her. County property, ma'am. We'll inventory and return personal items. Her evidence, save home copies and the mailed report, confiscated. Escorted out under summer sun, colleagues averting eyes, she clutched her cardboard box like a refugee from her own life. That evening, she phoned the Post. My report, 53 pages on infant trafficking, evidence against Thorne, did you receive it? Receptionist, polite confusion. No record, ma'am. Mailroom logs, everything substantial. Describe the envelope? Details given. Promise to check. No callback ever came. The report vanished, intercepted, perhaps, by hands with reach. Eleanor sat in darkness, cigarette glowing, realizing the depth of the entombment. Power had mobilized, job lost, files seized, press silenced. Yet one copy remained hidden. She duplicated efforts, sending to Columbia State, Charlotte Observer, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, FBI in Columbia, NAACP in New York. Responses trickled, polite dismissals from papers citing jurisdictional limits or age of events, NAACP's acknowledgement of review, then silence. In the quiet aftermath, spiritual reckoning deepened. Eleanor knelt by her bed, Bible open to Romans, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Had she presumed to wield divine justice? Or was this trial part of a larger plan, her suffering mirroring the mother's long grief? The stolen children, living as heirs to lies, carried unseen chains. Exposure might free some, shatter others. But concealment perpetuated the sin, letting darkness claim victory. She stared at the hidden safe, weighing the final copy. Truth demanded release, yet mercy whispered caution. In Charleston's shadowed heart, where spires pierced heaven but secrets festered below, the battle between light and concealment raged on, one woman's conscience against an empire of silence. In the autumn of 1951, as leaves turned crimson along the Ashley River and the first chill whispered of winter's approach, Eleanor Voss packed the remnants of her Charleston life into a single suitcase. The city that had once promised stability now felt like a cage of complicit silence. No job awaited her return, no allies emerged from the shadows. She boarded a Greyhound bus bound for Atlanta, the engine's low rumble echoing the ache in her chest. In her carry-on, wrapped in plain brown paper, rested the last surviving copy of her 58-page report, a chronicle of theft disguised as charity, of divine bonds severed for profit. She had preserved it like a sacred relic, hidden in the lining of her valise, a quiet act of defiance against the forces that had stripped her of everything else. Atlanta offered anonymity in its sprawling suburbs. Eleanor found employment as a typist in a mid-sized law firm, her fingers flying over keys in rhythmic penance. She rented a modest apartment in Buckhead, its windows overlooking quiet streets lined with dogwoods. In 1953, she married Robert Collins, a soft-spoken accountant whose steady presence anchored her turbulent spirit. He never pressed about the nightmares that woke her, visions of empty cradles, mother's wails echoing through hospital corridors, a doctor's calm face masking abomination. They raised 2 children, a daughter who inherited her mother's sharp hazel eyes, and a son whose laughter-filled rooms Eleanor once feared would remain forever silent. Yet the past refused burial. Eleanor subscribed to the Charleston papers, scanning columns for any crack in the facade. She clipped articles on civil rights stirrings, hospital dedications honoring Dr. Elias Thorne's enduring legacy, adoption society galas. Each mention twisted like a knife. Thorne's name adorned plaques, scholarships bore his imprimatur, his portrait gazed benevolently from walls where mothers once wept. The stolen children, now adults, lived in ignorance. Their bloodlines laundered, their origins expunged. Eleanor prayed nightly, kneeling beside her bed with Bible open to Lamentations, "The Lord is righteous, I have rebelled against his word." She wondered if her silence now compounded the sin, or if preservation itself was a form of witness. The 1960s brought seismic shifts. Marches in Selma, legislation in Washington, voices rising against long-entrenched wrongs. In 1968, amid the fervor of civil rights awakening, New York Times journalist Patricia Harlan published a searing exposé, Coerced Adoptions and Forced Sterilizations, the Hidden Plunder of Black Motherhood in the South. The piece detailed hospital pressures, agency deceptions, the systemic stripping of black families. Harlan named patterns Eleanor recognized: infants vanishing, mothers gaslit into grief, records sealed tighter than tombs. Tears blurred the newsprint as Eleanor read. Validation, after 17 years of isolation. She descended to the basement storage closet, unlocked the metal box untouched since 1951. Inside, the report, interview transcripts brittle with age, timelines mapped in her precise hand. She composed a cover letter, raw, unsparing, detailing her discoveries, the firing, the vanished mailing, the lawyer's betrayal. She enclosed everything and posted it to Harlan in New York. 3 days later, the phone rang. Harlan's voice crackled across lines, "Mrs. Collins, this is monumental. You've mapped an entire network, dates, names, money trails. You've carried this alone since '51? I tried to speak," Eleanor replied. "They took my position, my files. The press ignored it. I thought the world wasn't ready. Now it is," Harlan said. "Institutional trust is crumbling. People demand accountability. Will you go public? Let me name you?" Eleanor thought of Beatrice's porch confession, Viola's sterilized rage, the mother's collective lament rising like incense. Of Thorne's sanctified legacy mocking their pain. "Yes. Use my name. Let the Story Breathe. Harlan dove in. Over 4 months, she retraced Eleanor's steps, Charleston courthouses, elderly survivors' homes, dusty ledgers, and municipal vaults. She uncovered extensions operations persisting post-Thorn into the early 1950s, associates carrying the torch. Mercy Haven, formerly St. Catherine's, still functioned, records sealed. Thorn's pediatric wing gleamed, his name invoked in annual awards for child welfare excellence. Harlan's draft swelled, Charleston's stolen children, a trafficking empire masquerading as mercy. Scheduled for March 1969 front-page publication. Then, 3 weeks prior, tragedy. Harlan's car plunged from a rain-slick bridge in rural South Carolina, returned from Charleston interviews. Authorities ruled accident, narrow road, poor visibility, single vehicle. No witnesses, no foul play indicated. Her notes vanished, preliminary drafts at the Times insufficient for print. An editor called Eleanor with condolences. Without her full work, we can't proceed. Would you collaborate with another? Eleanor agreed. Waited. No call came. 6 months later, her inquiry yielded polite refusal, cooperation withheld, standards unmet. She understood, intervention. Power protecting itself, perhaps even Harlan's death no accident. Paranoia crept in every late-night creak, every unfamiliar car. Yet no threats materialized. She was merely a suburban widow now, harmless in obscurity. In 1974, breast cancer diagnosis forced confrontation with mortality. Eleanor made final attempts, packets to HEW, Southern Poverty Law Center, NAACP leadership. Courteous acknowledgments arrived, then silence. No probes, no headlines. She passed in November 1976, 4 days past her 53rd birthday. Cancer had ravaged swiftly. At her funeral, family mourned a devoted wife and mother whose quiet intensity they never fully grasped. Boxes of old papers went to the attic, preserved out of respect, untouched by curiosity. 43 years they gathered dust. Through moves, cleanings, generations. In 2019, granddaughter Amanda Collins, social work graduate student at Emory, focused on adoption ethics, cleared her late father's home for sale. In the attic, amid mothballs and forgotten heirlooms, the boxes waited. Amanda opened one. 20 pages in, hands shaking, her grandmother's meticulous accusations, matched records, mother's testimonies. Digitizing commenced, scans, cross-references via Ancestry, 23andMe databases. Patterns emerged, living elderly adoptees, descendants carrying oral histories dismissed as family myth. Clara Era Williams's granddaughter, now a D.C. civil rights attorney, Evelyn Porter's great-niece preserving journals of unresolved grief. Amanda's academic paper, Racial Passing and Institutional Child Theft in Jim Crow Charleston, 1922 to 1940. Submitted to the Journal of African American History. Concurrently, a website launched, Scanned Documents, Timelines, titled Charleston Stolen Children, The Truth Margaret Hayes Tried to Tell. Viral within days. Charleston Post front-paged it. National outlets descended. DNA kits offered gratis. Social media amplified cries long silenced. By 2020, court orders unsealed Carolina Family Services records, successor to Mercy Haven, confirming, expanding Eleanor's tally to 214 cases. Thorn's name stripped from hospital wing, scholarships ended, awards renamed. Apologies issued, compensation funds established. Lawsuits settled quietly, some tried publicly, documents exposing complicity. A 2021 memorial rose near the old hospital, granite etched with verified mothers' names, dedication to the unrecorded. Eleanor's inscribed as witness, the archivist who refused silence when power demanded it. Amanda spoke at dedication, my grandmother lost everything, position, peace, hope. She died thinking she'd failed. But she preserved truth. Nearly 70 years later, it bloomed. Persistence matters. Documentation endures. Refusal to be silent plants seeds for justice. The last confirmed survivor, Robert Hartwell, died 2023 at 96. Learned truth at 93 via DNA. Biological mother Alice Hayes, no relation, told her infant perished. He changed his name to Robert Hayes, spent final years honoring her grief. I had love, success, he reflected. But built on theft. I'd trade it for my real mother's arms. Records digitized, accessible via Charleston Historical Society. Studied in academia, racial injustice, bioethics, adoption reform. Taught as cautionary tale of unchecked authority. In 1951, Eleanor noticed anomalies in basement ledgers, patterns screaming sin. She documented, preserved, persisted despite cost. Truth waited buried, not destroyed. In God's economy, seeds sown in faithfulness bear fruit in His time. Eleanor never witnessed vindication, but her vigil made it inevitable. The mother's laments, the children's fractured identities, the doctor's fallen idol, all redeemed through one woman's refusal to forget.